Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being with me on this Friday, September 11th. This is a day that we spend, hopefully, each and every one of us reflecting on the events of 19 years ago. I know I do every single 9/11. This year, I'm honored to be joined by Matt Bocci. He is the first child of 9/11 to write a memoir about the loss of his father. He is joining me live here to his loss, but also his journey to finding joy and also spreading it now to others. Matt, good morning. Thanks for
Hey,
being with me.
good morning. Thanks for having me.
I'm so looking forward to speaking with you. As I said before we hopped on, today and every 9/11 for the last 19 years, it's a moment of reflection. For you, this is the first year that you have a book that just came out September 8th. It is a memoir, the first one of a child of 9/11. You were 9 years old when you lost your father in the World Trade Center. And I just, before we get into the book, want to talk to you about how you spend this day, what you think about each 9/11, and how you are feeling 19 years later.
Well, typically we go to this shrine in Sterling, New Jersey. And by the way, thank you so much for having me this morning. It is an honor. And so typically we go to this small memorial service in Sterling, New Jersey, where they have two beams from the towers, and there's a bell tower in the middle, and the bell tower goes off when the planes hit the building and when the buildings collapsed eventually. And there's a moment of silence when when the bell tower goes off. And then at the end of the mass, we go up to the podium and then we say our loved ones' names out loud, and and just so that we can remember them. And it's just our own, it's our way of saying their names out loud so that they can forever live on. Um, and this year, obviously, it was canceled, unfortunately. But today, surprisingly enough, right? It's uh, it's a beautiful day. I'm actually filled with a little bit of joy today. Obviously, I'm spreading my story and my book's out now, and I'm so thrilled. And it's been a long time coming and something I've worked so hard for. But what's amazing is that most of my dad's family is coming over today. We're gonna spend the afternoon together, and even my mom said too, it's like we're spending this day today remembering the life that he lived, and that's what he would want, and that's what he would always have wanted for me, rather than the negativity that I focused on for so many years. So it's just a beautiful way to remember him, and at the same time, it's important that we do it this way instead of focusing on the negative.
Yeah, and you in this book recount all of the years that you spent searching for answers and what happened to your father in his last moments, turning to alcohol, to numb the pain. And this journey for you has come to this place that now you find joy, you're sober, you are now speaking all across the country to people and educating them on how to handle trauma. I want to start from the beginning when you were 9 years old and what it was like for you to live that horror, to go through that trauma, and what happened in the years that followed that got you to the point that you are now.
So when I was 9, I was really unaware of what exactly had happened to my dad. I knew of a few things. I knew that he spoke to my mom on the phone. Eventually, he said goodbye to her. I also knew that he spoke to his brother, my uncle, and said goodbye to him. And my uncle was the last person that we know of who spoke to him. Um, and so in the years that came, I started looking at videos and pictures because I would see uh, the North Tower, and I would see people hanging out of the tower, and it just was blowing me away. I was dumbfounded by what I was seeing. And so seeing the fact that so many people were voluntarily and almost being forced to hang out of these windows 1,300 plus feet in the air. I had been in that tower and I had known how high up it was. And so, to say fear would be going through someone's mind is an understatement. But also the fact that they were faced with such a horrible, situation inside the tower, it made sense. So I became fascinated with trying to figure out what happened to my dad, and I wanted to solve that long lasting mystery, which was how did he actually perish that day? Did he jump from the towers, or did he, die from asphyxiation? Did he die when the building collapsed? All these things were rummaging through my mind, and I became really inquisitive about that and curious, and I was determined to figure that out. And ultimately, that curiosity led to me being sexually abused, and that vulnerability of mine being exploited. The person who did that was an uncle through marriage, and it was obviously a lot to go through as a kid. At that time, it was like I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know how to go about it, because I was looking for a father figure, obviously, and most people in my life refused to start talking about 9/11 with me anymore, because for so many years I had asked the same questions over and over and over again, and they just knew that engaging in those conversations wasn't going to do any good for me. So my dad didn't jump from the towers, but that individual told me that he did, and that's what led to the abuse. And it also, and unfortunately for me, I after hearing, yeah, your dad jumped her, and thinking that that was the truth, that quest and obsession was just never going to end. It was incessant, and I was determined that I was going to find a picture of him hanging out of the windows, or maybe that he jumped. And it wasn't until years later that I found out the truth. But um, dealing with all those emotions and the guilt and shame that came from all of that, and also just the guilt and shame that came from, in my mind, thinking I was labeled as a child of 9/11, and that people would label me that way, and look at me that way. It led to me using drugs, especially, and alcohol, to numb the pain. And I spiraled deep into drug addiction, and I was trying to get out of it for so many years, and thankfully and luckily I was able to do so. But it took a lot of perseverance to get to that point, and ultimately to really want to be sober, because for so many years I had no desire to actually try it.
Yeah, I think there are so many people, especially in this pandemic, who maybe have attempted to get sober, have been through their own traumas, self medicated in that way. And this has thrown them back into that spiral because of this incredible, just devastating time that we're in. What advice do you have for people when it comes to the trauma that they're living right now, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's job loss, whether it's uncertainty?
The way I viewed sobriety and the things that I went through, right? Because in sobriety, I've been sober now for over 5 years. But in each year of sobriety, I've dealt with something, right? I had to deal with bringing that uncle, that wasn't a blood uncle, but an uncle through marriage, to justice, and dealing with that right after I just celebrated my first year of sobriety, and in that first year, dealing with the legal process that ensued. It was a long process and a difficult one. But something that I held true to, and I still do to this day, is knowing that a drink or a drug is not going to solve my problems, and it's not going to. Look, it may temporarily remove the pain and melt it away, but once it wears off, it's going to come right back, and it's going to come back harder. And that's always what happened to me. So when I got sober, that's when I started dealing with all these events that I went through, the feelings that I bottled down for so many years and kept inside. No one knew about the abuse. So these are all things that I kept secret, and was suffering because of it. And ultimately, getting sober is what I needed to do in order to start to heal. And I'm so grateful that I've been able to do that. And so I think that with this country going through so much turmoil, it's important that we know that using substances or other things to try to, hide our emotions or temporarily remove them is not going to do us any good in the long run. And so that's part of the message I'm trying to spread.
Shirley here is chiming in, just saying to you, I'm so sorry you went through this pain. I share the experience of trauma. I'm so happy to know that you found peace. You're a strong man. And that's really the purpose of this book, is that you have found that peace and that you can bring that to others and teach them that there is a way, even after the incredible trauma that you experience. I just want to go back a little bit. The name of the book,
Mm-hmm.
Sway, all of us remember as kids, maybe going to the office with dad. I know that that's really the name came from a Christmas party where you attended with your dad. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So, I've been to the World Trade Center numerous times, and one of the times that we went, it was my younger brother Nick and I. I'm the oldest of four boys, but he was the one who was with me that time. And my dad, who was afraid of heights, told me to go close to the window and look down. So we did. We hesitated, but we did it. And he's like, look down. And he asked if we felt it. And I was like, what do you mean? And then he's like, do you see it? And then just ever so slightly, you could see the building swaying in the wind. And that also, that the title also serves as a metaphor for my life, and the fact that I had to overcome struggles and adversities and obstacles, and certainly weave through all of them, but eventually was able to stand tall and strong and move forward and straighten myself out.
And you say it was a spiritual experience where you really believe the spirit of your dad was there that got you to that?
Absolutely. When my dad passed away, really before we even knew that he passed away, but it was assumed, my mom was told almost immediately to look out for the signs, and I think it was a night or two after 9/11. My mom was sitting in her room grieving and upset, obviously, and I'm not really sure if she was praying to him, but in that moment, a fly landed on her nightstand, and it's a very particular type of fly. And so it lands on her nightstand, and that was the sign that she took that my dad wasn't coming home, but that he was safely in heaven. And so that fly ended up staying in our house for 6 months after 9/11. And then throughout the years, it would be around in good times, bad times, etc. But it was always around. And so every time we would see it, we would then, look at it as my dad in spirit form. So when I was right before I got sober, I had legal trouble that was looming over my head. And essentially, I was at a crossroads where I knew I could go back to meet with a probation officer in a month, use fake urine to get off, to manipulate the drug test, or I could try to give sobriety a shot, and really, surrender to the fact that I was an addict. I walked outside. I was home alone, and I was just pacing and couldn't figure out what to do and how to process it. And I knew that I could be going to jail if I messed up again. I ended up walking outside, and I looked up in the sky and was blown away by this just crystal clear sapphire blue sky that brought me right back to 9/11, the morning of 9/11. And I started crying. And for me, crying in an active addiction was rare. I never did that. I numbed the pain successfully for a really, really long time. And the only emotions I felt were like happy ones, I guess, or tried to at least. But I immediately broke down crying, and I asked my dad, I said, "Dad, please give me a sign, I need help." And within an instant, a fly lands on the railing that I was leaning against. And I intuitively took that as my sign to do what I was thinking in my gut, which was to get sober. I was crying, and I filmed it on my phone. And I walked in right after and called up a detox facility, and I said, "I need a bed ASAP." And they were like, "We can get you in 2 days." And I said, "Fine, book it." And I booked that bed, and then my path to sobriety started.
Did you see a fly this year? When that book came out, that just made me tear up. Sorry, Matt. It's just such a beautiful story. Have you seen the fly this year?
Saw it yesterday, actually. In my room, I have storm window. We have storm windows in some of the rooms, and they're sealed when they're locked, right? So it's really pretty much impossible for something to get through, And yesterday I was, doing interviews and stuff and talking about my story and my dad and all those things that happened to me. And I had a break, and I walk into my room. I had been in my dad's office where I'm sitting right now, in my room, and of course, what do I see? On the window is a fly. It had gotten through it had gotten. So right then and there, I took a picture of that and saved it again. And that was, another little sign for me and something to keep me going and motivate me.
What do you think your dad would say about this book?
I think my dad would be proud of the fact that I'm finally pursuing something that makes me happy and something that I'm passionate about. I think for so many years, I thought I needed to live up to an image and, work in a field that he would be, proud of. So I worked in finance, and I was miserable, and my dad was miserable when he was in finance too. And, wanted to and voiced wanting to quit his job, and find something he was truly passionate about. But obviously he didn't have the chance to do that. So now, after getting sober, I still continue to go back into finance and work in these jobs that I hated. And I had written my and was trying to get it published. I couldn't get an agent, couldn't get anyone to take it. Um, and literally, I had, God and my dad working in my life, and finally, I got laid off, and then boom, I said to myself, going into the new year, I would give it my last shot and give it my all, and if it didn't work out, I'd find something else. And a month and a half into the new year, I got my deal, and now I'm chasing this, and I'm gonna pursue this fully and tell my story. I'm planning on writing a second book, but I want to speak and tell people my story and try to be a message of hope and inspiration for people.
Yeah, Emily here is saying, love you, cuz. Thank you for sharing your story. You've touched so many of our lives. We're so proud of you. How is your family doing? How's your mom?
My mom is good. My family is also doing well. It's this year is different, like I said, and um, I think that today, this afternoon, spending the time with my dad's family and my whole family is going to be something that we're going to cherish, because we bonded together for many years in the wake of 9/11, especially. And my family was always very close knit, but this event and my dad's death just propelled it to be even stronger. So it's something that I'm looking forward to because, I think that we all remember it every single year, but at the same time, it starts to fade away a little bit, and that same presence and family, being around on this day has not been the same because we're all doing our own thing and doing different masses and memorials. But today we're going to spend the day together, and to me, it's going to bring me right back to back then and how much I valued and it was so important to me that we were all together throughout all of that.
And AJ saying here, what a strong person. This story can help change so many lives. I know it helped me change mine. Thank you, Matt. Thanks, AJ, for chiming in on that. And then also another family member of yours saying, proud to call you family. Your dad is so proud of you. I think being able to write a book, as you point out, it's incredibly hard to get something published, being able to reach so many people. What do you hope people take away from this when they read it? Because a lot of people have been chiming in that they have already read it. It is out. It came out September 8th. What do you hope people take away from it?
I want people to, for starters, not forget 9/11 and the fact that so many lives were damaged and forever changed because of that day. That day was the beginning for me. And, unfortunately, my dad's death was obviously a life changer, but it was something that affected me and resulted in the other things that I discussed. And so, it's not so easy for us to just say, oh, 9/11 happened and that we forget and move on. But I think my story is a story of the immeasurable like strength and resilience that the human spirit can embody. And that's what I really want to spread. The fact is, the way I look at it now is the events and things that I went through don't have to shape or define me as a person. They are part of my story, but they don't have to characterize me anymore. And I allowed that to happen for a long time. But now it's just something that I use to spread a message of positivity at the end of the day, because there is a happy ending, and my story does have a happy ending, one in which, I think will resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah, it certainly already has. You're incredible, Matt. More people chiming in. So proud of you, Matt. Love you. That is JCA Botch. I also really wanted to get an idea from you of what you imagined your life to be like when you were going through the worst and the darkest days 19 years ago. Where were you imagining you would be? And are you surprised where you are?
I mean, I don't. I think I always want to be like like a professional athlete or something. But life obviously took a lot of turns and changes in those years to come. But you know, where I am today, I'm exactly where I need to be, and I'm happy to be here. I never thought that I would be a voice that people could to hear and be inspired by, and that's my goal. Ideally, that's the case. Um, but I never thought that I would, kind of bear that cross, and so now I'm doing that, and I'm willfully doing it too. I want to try to show people that these traumas that we go through don't have to be the life changers. They don't have to also affect you the way I let them affect me. I think that we can build from all these things, and and allow them to help us grow as people. But for so many years, I let them, bog me down and become issues that I used as excuses for the things that I was doing.
I think we need that more than ever right now. This year, I think, in just the divisiveness of this country, I think has been very difficult for so many people. It leaves people scared, uncertain. Um, we forget the America that we were in 2001. I think that's the hardest thing for me as a journalist to just see it all this way, and how divisive we've become. What would you say to those that are feeling that helplessness, that are feeling a bit of that feeling of being lost, and that there isn't much of the, things that united us as it did before?
Got to hold on to that hope. It started to slowly diminish for me and evaporate, and I still held on to it. And I always thought that I always saw that light at the end of the tunnel. And when I finally started chasing it and I got to it, I wasn't going to let it go. I think that that can be symbolized for other people too, in anything. It doesn't have to resemble drug addiction or alcohol abuse or alcoholism. I think that we go through so many traumatic and life-changing events. We go through loss, and the country's going through turmoil right now. I think that the one of the images that really resonated with me as a kid and continued to do so was the fact that this country was united as one and really did embody what America is supposed to be about. Right after 9/11, we showed our resilience and our strength and the fortitude to be able to build back the country, and ultimately, rebuilding the World Trade Center and whatnot. So I think the fact is we're so divided right now, and you can blame it on all different things, but I think that remembering the way we bonded together after 9/11 should serve as a strong reminder as to what we are capable of doing, and the fact that we need to kind of instill those values once again in this country, because there's just too much hatred and negativity spread throughout, and it crosses so many barriers, and that needs to be wiped away. We need to build one another up. There was no discrimination on 9/11. People were helping one another, carrying each other out of the buildings. I just remember being in like public places and random strangers hugging one another. I mean, these are things that you saw before, and that type of mentality and behavior needs to be reinstated.
And it's still in all of us. I truly believe that. I believe that that's human nature, and we just have to have more voices like yours to hear it. Before I let you go, can you tell us a little bit about your dad, how you remember him, how you want others to remember John?
My dad loved the simple things in life. But he cherished family, and family was extremely important to him. And that just and the way that he lived his final moments was a testament to the man that he was, and the fact that he was a man of character. He didn't want my mom and his brother to be afraid, and he didn't show fear in his voice, and that just shows the courage and bravery that he had as a person in his final moments, and just really in general as a man. He was the best dad. He was the type of dad who loved to wrestle with us, and he coached our sports teams. But one of the ways we're keeping his memory alive, he was very passionate about sports cars. He wanted sports his whole life, and he finally had the success to get what he wanted. And so we have his one of his cars. It was a 911 Carrera, a Porsche 911 Carrera, and we were able to recently, well, a couple of years ago, we fixed it up and everything, and it's running. And my brother Nick and I took it out recently, and that's just one of the ways that we can keep his memory alive. Driving his car, and just remember, and just also just realizing that this is what he used to drive to work every day, and that he sat in this car. And sadly, he went to work like every other day, like on top of the world, just like full of confidence, and his life was taken too soon. So I want to remember him for the life he lived, and that's what he would want.
I have no doubt he is so incredibly proud of you. Matt, this has been such a wonderful, inspirational thing to me. I know it's been to the folks that have been viewing as well. Can you give people some information of where they can get the book, how they can follow you, and everything like that?
You can follow me here on Instagram. I have the same exact Twitter handle. My book is on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Kindle version, Apple Books. It's also on audio version on Audible. And so you can get it anywhere in any way that you like to read or absorb books.
Matt, it is such an honor to speak with you. And it is just an inspiration to so many. And we need it right now. As you point out, the country needs these voices. I hope everybody takes a moment, goes out, gets this book, and also lives it as well. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
You take care.
You too.